Welcome. So we're going to talk about the creative process. Now, the creative process is a title that is used for art, but it's problem solving just in general. Um, so take notes as we move along. So creativity is the use of imagination or original ideas. So to kind of break it down, it's appropriate and novel. Appropriate meaning the idea has to be realistic, and novel meaning it's original. No one else has it. So it's if we're talking about creativity in photography, we wouldn't it wouldn't be appropriate if it was a sculpture or a building. We're talking about photography. Okay, novel is just original. So, what is the creative process? This is the creative process. You have a client, you have a brief, which is getting to know the client, the problem, the idea, the design, the feedback, and then finalize. And we're going to go into each one of these in more depth. So, the client and the brief. So, the client, imagine someone comes to you, you need to get to know that person. So, you need to identify this person, what is their context, and then the brief is getting to know, finding out more information. So, if you were a contractor building homes, you'd identify the person. Context would be them needing to buy a house, and then the brief would be them uh, telling you or you asking questions on what kind of house they wanted to build. So, so as you think about the client and the brief and the problem and solving a problem, um, the client, the brief is the ability for you to get to know this person because you want to provide a resource for them or a product for them um, that they want. Okay. So after you get to know this person, the next step is the problem. So if we're sticking with the house, a contractor, um, you go to the problem. So as we go through this problem, you've got to think logistics, creativity, and strategy. So some logical things to consider when thinking about this problem. Um, for building a house, it would be where is it going to be built? What materials are going to be built? Strategy is time wise for a timeline. They want to move out of their current house in 9 months, so that's the strategy. And creativity is taking maybe some of their ideas that they have because they maybe house shopped and coming up with new ideas or adding on to those ideas. So logic is the logic is kind of what to consider the world constraints, and the strategy is how you would deliver this product of the house for the example. Okay, now we go to the idea stage. So we have the problem, which is they want them a house to be built. The idea is now for us to come up with a solution. So the idea, the client comes to you, they want a house built. So what you're going to do is you're going to come up and you're going to be open to a lot of ideas, and you're going to write all these ideas down. You're going to make lists. You're going to research. Um, and so you're going to make a list of the do's and the don'ts, the haves and the have-nots, the things that they want, the things that they absolutely don't want, the things that they might be considered important, and other things are like no, not so much. They have the number of kids, so they want each kid to have their own room. So you make a list of the number of rooms that they have to have. All of these different things, right? And you write them down and you start researching. Now you're going to go and talk to people. You're going to go talk to other homeowners that built houses or that you built their house for. You're then going to go and you're going to talk to other people that have that same size of family. What do you want? What would you like? What would be good in a house? You're going to go online. You're going to search for houses. You're going to see what's stylish. You're going to go on HGTV. You're going to go look at books and magazines. This old house, whatever you need to find to research. Okay, so the idea, you're going to come up with all of these ideas, and you're going to come with, I mean, everything. When we talk about being open, it's kind of that idea of there's no bad idea, right? You're throwing everything out there because you don't want to hold anything back. You want the client to know that you considered everything. Okay? And when you're taking risks, you're thinking, you know what? I don't know, maybe this client might not like this idea, or I'm not sure, but I'm just going to go for it. And worst thing they can do is say no. Okay? But when it comes to the idea, you've got to do your due diligence with your research, with talking to other people, and looking online, and looking at past projects that you may have done. Okay, so we have the idea. Now it's time for the design. Okay, now when we design, we go from the idea to the design. And so we have design, so we create. And back in the day, they would make maybe a model out of a small model, but now we have programs that we design in 3D. So you could design this house, sketching, right? They're throwing down a lot of ideas on paper. A lot of contractors, they're in meetings, they just have notes and they have napkins, whatever, and they're just sketching all these ideas down because they're getting it on paper so that they don't forget it. Okay, a lot of these ideas are rough, right? They haven't solidified. They're just word vomiting. When you're designing, you're just throwing everything out on paper, or throwing everything out so that you don't miss anything. And you might have stacks of ideas and thoughts, but in the end, you might sift through them, but you have these ideas. Okay, so you sketch. That's probably the first thing. You got to know that these are rough ideas. You're like, okay, I need 5 bedrooms, and these bedrooms have to have X, Y, or Z. Right? You're not worrying about paint color in this house yet. You're just getting the walls built. And then prototyping is cheap in that you're not building a whole house. You're not building, if you can build it online, you're going to build it online, in a program, a 3D program, so they can walk through it and experience it. And it's cheaper than the actual design, the actual house, because it's not real. But those are important things to get, the design out there, so that your client can see or experience, or have some kind of experience to the product. Okay. So after the design, we go to feedback. Now you come up with a design, and when you go to feedback, if you're working for a boss or you're working for someone, you get their feedback. You go to your friends, you go to your family, you go to your client. You actually go to the client. You go to a focus group. You go to your colleagues, and you say, "Hey, what works and what doesn't work?" And in your life, just in general, right? Like my life, I have the feedback where I talk to my parents, I talk to my brothers and sisters, I talk to my friends, because I trust their opinion, and I trust what they say. So feedback on your design is important after a design, because they'll tell you, you know what, you're in the right direction, but we need to maybe move this or do that, or maybe make this room bigger, or make this house bigger, or the garage bigger or smaller, or whatnot. Okay, so feedback is very important in the process. So we have the design, then we have feedback. From the feedback, you actually jump back to the idea and then the design, because um, you might change the design after getting more feedback. So you get more feedback, you alter the design, get more feedback, and then once the client says go, we start. You finalize, and that's where you build, and you're actually you build life size this house for this example, and And even while you're building it, you're getting feedback because it's a longer process and you're trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work. But as you finalize, you're going to evaluate the process and review it. You're going to evaluate what happened throughout this creative process that worked, and review, okay, after I build this house and the people are moved in, what worked and what didn't work. What do 6 months later, what does the client wish would have happened? Okay, so that's finalize. And so next time when you build a house, you know how to go about the creative process and creating a house from scratch for a client better. That's the purpose of finalizing. So this was a really quick run through, but you have the brief, getting to know the client, the problem, figuring out the what the problem is, ideas, coming up with a bunch of ideas, designs, creating designs, and they're going to be rough. They're not going to be perfect. Getting feedback and then finalize. Okay. So this is the creative process, uh, problem solving. If some for other areas, not just art, but you're going to use this almost in every day. If you have a problem, you don't just automatically come up with a solution. You kind of have this elements of these different ideas. For teenagers, what are we going to do on Friday night with all of your friends? Okay, you're going to come up with ideas, and then your design may be, hey, your ideas may be, hey, let's go play a basketball game and or make whatever it is. But you're going to design it, and then you're going to get feedback. Hey, to your friends, hey, should we do this or should we do that, or what do you think we should do? And then you're actually going to do it. But that's one Friday night. You might come back in a week to the next Friday night and think, oh, last Friday night, I know that something didn't work, so let's change it up. And that's the creative process right there. Okay. So this is just a fun cartoon, Calvin and Hobbes. Um, and Hobbes looks to him and says, do you have an idea for the project yet? And Calvin says, no, I'm waiting for inspiration. You can't just turn on creativity like a faucet. You have to be in the right mood, right? And that's a lot what we think. Okay, I'm just waiting for that right mood. And Hobbes says, what mood is that? And then Calvin, which as a student or as a teacher or as anyone, we know sometimes it's that last minute panic when the clock is ticking and our project is due, our assignments are due, our essay is due, and we just start doing it. Um, that's not a perfect solution, but um, that's what happens sometimes. But in the end, it would be better if we went through this creative process with a little bit more time, so that we could allow for the brief, for the problem, idea, design, feedback, and finalization to be enveloped, to kind of sleep on it and figure things out. So, and then here's another just example. The creative process, this is kind of what you would feel like, and you might have felt this already in some of your classes or in some of your projects. You come up with an idea and they're like, yeah, this is going to be awesome, and then you're like, oh, this is hard, and then you think, this is terrible, this is the worst, and then you start questioning yourself. You're like, oh, like I'm terrible, and then you're like, you start to come out of it and keep pushing through it, and you're like, hey, this isn't that bad, and then at the end you're like, this is awesome. That's kind of the creative process, but in emotions, I guess. So once again, um, client, you figure out the brief, you figure out who they are, you figure out what the problem is, you come up with ideas, you design, you get feedback, and then you finalize. And that is the creative process.